Welcome everybody to Listening to People, Closing the Accountability Gap in Humanitarian Aid. My name is Alex Ross. I'm the founder and the managing director of a charity called Loop. I'm going to explain a little bit more about Loop with you today in the upcoming session. So welcome. If you'd like to ask any questions or leave any comments, please do so in the chat at any time and I can respond to you. I've also left my email address down at the bottom and that will show up again at the end of the slide. So you're welcome to contact me directly if you think there could be any potential for collaboration or discussions together. So I'm going to jump right in and talk a little bit about Loop. The problem that we're trying to be solved has been really well articulated in a number of documents, including those on the screen, and has been called out most recently by Mark Lowcock, the outgoing head of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, when he said the humanitarian system is not listening to people in crisis. Loop is trying to provide a way for anybody working in the humanitarian system to listen and engage with people receiving humanitarian or development aid. We see a real opportunity now with the technological revolution and all of the amazing technology that's been developed in the private sector, trying to stitch that together for the use case of the humanitarian or the development sector, so that we can listen to and learn from local people about the aid that they receive, the experiences that they have, to increase aid's efficiency, effectiveness, and impact. Loop believes that everyone has an opinion about the aid that they received. Everyone is an active agent of change. Technology now exists to listen to everyone and will probably continue to listen to even more people. That people have the right to be heard and that there will fundamentally be better services as a result. Aid isn't something overseas that happens over there that isn't relevant for the UK public service. There are many use cases. The United Kingdom and population are very well known to be incredibly generous and donate towards emergency sudden onset crises. We also have a lot of refugees and asylum seekers who would no doubt be able to use the technology like Loop to air their concerns, ask questions, say thanks for the incredible services that they're receiving. Diaspora based in the UK could use Loop to engage with communities at home, share experiences, put people in touch with each other and understand the situation a little bit more to be able to help from afar. But we'll come back to those use cases a little bit later in the session. So what is Loop? How does it work? Loop is a safe and accessible global platform that enables an independent, permanent, and common service for feedback and complaints. That could be positive thanks. It could be reports of abuse, sexual exploitation and abuse, fraud and corruption, for example, in a safe way. There's lots that we're learning as we roll out Loop, learning from users as it's being used. But we've got 4 foundation principles that we take all of our decisions and our design around. The first foundational principle is decentralized control. The idea here is that anybody has control over when and if they'd like to feedback. So anyone from anywhere at any time on any device in most languages can feedback on what's important to them about any organization or activity or lack thereof. And they have the potential to receive direct feedback, thus closing the feedback loop. The second foundational principle is open data. So information is power. Open data is a common theme in UK digital space, including decentralized, inclusive and democratic processes that we see in lots of other platforms around the place. And Loop really harnesses that learning and thinking in the digital space and brings that to the humanitarian sector. The third principle is open dialogue. So these are very complex, protracted, ingrained issues that we're trying to resolve and support local people to address. And there's no one organisation or one project that can resolve these issues. So the idea is really to open up the space to understand experiences and to get lots of input from think tanks, from donors, from diaspora, from community leaders, from one project to another, from one organisation to another. We're really trying to bring the collective knowledge, garner the crowd's information and knowledge to help respond to crises. The fourth principle is less about the tool itself and more about the structure of the charity that we're building and walking the talk. So I am directly accountable to a group of governing board members who come from affected communities, and we have a non-decision making board of the more common actors in the sector, such as the United Nations, the Red Cross, think tanks, donors, etc. So, how does it work? Anybody can submit across languages and languages that they feel comfortable in. So we have English, Arabic, Spanish and French, which are very common globally. But then in the 4 countries where we're currently operating, we've added on additional languages which are not always normally seen in the digital space. And these have been chosen and supported by local staff. You can also input across different channels. This is owned and adapted by the local staff who host the Loop platform. You can input anywhere from the URL talktoloop.org. All of this information goes to a local moderator who speaks the local languages, who understands the local context, the risks, the different actors, who to invite to respond to these different feedbacks, who to tag in, etc. And they follow community guidelines and moderation protocols. So unlike Twitter and Facebook, nothing goes up on the open platform until it's been seen by these local moderators who then will post it if it's safe for everybody. Once the post has been sent from the moderator out onto the platform, it arrives here at talktoloop.org, where anybody can see the stories that have come in. So here we are on the platform. This is the live platform that anybody can access. You can see all of the different stories that have come in, just like a normal social media thread. You can tag in different organizations. That can be the author themselves or the moderator to invite people to respond, to be notified of it. If you reply to that, you'll be notified of any other responses that come in to that thread of information. Then we take this unstructured qualitative data and we analyze it on the statistics page. And here you can see over time the types of stories that have come in, how long it's taken to reply, what types of feedback has been replied to. You can also see what types of things people have been feeding back about and the demographics of people who are feeding back. And all of that can be filtered based on anybody's interests. So you might want to filter concerns, the type of organization that you're working for, a specific demographic, if you're a group working with elderly people or disabled people, for example, and then location as well. So all of that can be filtered and it is updated accordingly. I'd now like to dig in and explain a little bit more about how it works with sensitive stories, because they're not posted up on the open platform. And this is something that the users that we worked with in the Philippines, Zambia and Somalia said was some of the most interesting aspect of Loop, that they wouldn't feel shamed if they were to feed back. And I can imagine that that would be the same case for refugees or asylum seekers in the UK, that they can feed back anonymously and safely through Loop and have that referred on for assistance or accountability purposes. We've followed a survivor-centered approach, and if they choose that the story is sensitive or the moderator believes that it is a sensitive story that would do harm to the organisation or to the individual if it was posted on the open platform, then it goes to our case manager. And we also take these anonymous trends and you can analyse those in the same way that we have done for the open stories. So here we are on the statistics page. You can see the sensitive stories and the anonymous aggregated data that comes in. We're still very early days with only 12 reports so far. And you can start to see a little bit about what types of things are people reporting about, how many investigations have there been, what have the outcomes been, how many people have received assistance as a result of reporting through Loop. what types of organisations have received reports. So you can never get down to the individual organisation itself, because they are only allegations at this stage. And you can never identify the individual survivors. So this data will open up when we have enough aggregated information to make sure that the identity of individuals reporting could never be assumed by the data. So that would be both those who choose to share information, that could be first or third person, as well as those that the case is about. So once again, you can filter all of this data here at the top based on the type of case. Is it sexual exploitation and abuse, fraud, for example, what demographic groups, what location, dates, etc., and start to analyse the data a little bit further. So very briefly at the end here, just to summarise, that Loop is not responsible for responding to feedback. We notify organisations, we invite individuals to respond, but we're providing a collective service for anybody to use. We don't deliver surveys, and we don't report on findings, but the data is there and available for anybody to access and to use based on their needs. We're not part of further investigations, but we do refer it on into existing referral pathways, and we ask organisations to keep us informed of key milestones on a very sort of top line. And we don't report on organisations, so it's not a TripAdvisor for the humanitarian sector with star ratings about organisations. It has specifically been designed in a way to encourage greater engagement and involvement. So Loop is not responsible for responding to feedback. We enable an environment where anybody can feedback in a way that's easy and accessible. We're not a tool to do surveys, to deliver surveys. A lot of tools already exist. We don't report on findings, but we make sure that the data is available and people can identify the findings and the themes that are coming through in their area of work. We don't report and are not a part of further investigations. We refer it into existing referral pathways and ask organisations to keep us abreast of key milestones and an anonymous way about where the different cases are, so that we can map that in the open platform. And we don't rate organisations, so we're not a TripAdvisor for the humanitarian sector. It's specifically been designed in a way to encourage greater engagement and discussion, rather than necessarily to rate organisations. For this digital discussion, I think it's really important to look at the data protection issues and how we're integrating into other existing mechanisms that exist already. So with data protection, we've taken on accessibility audits to make sure that we're as accessible as possible. We're also doing data protection audits to try to identify where there might be loopholes in our system as it is, and fix those before they are identified by external people. We have really committed to informed consent, so we have this poster here in different languages. We have another layer down where there's a bit more information about what happens to people's data at what points in a very accessible language, and we have that translated into a number of different languages. And then we have the more legal, detailed version that's also available. We are GDPR compliant globally, not just for the European Union citizens, and we have got many different layers of protection that are built in, including the moderator, for example, and different encryption systems to help ensure data protection of the valuable information of people receiving humanitarian aid. We know through research that people prefer to give feedback face-to-face, and that's definitely something that Loop encourages, but we're there as like a backstop or a safety net. So if somebody attends a meeting but they didn't feel comfortable saying what they wanted to, or maybe they went home and had a chat to somebody and got some new ideas that they would have wished they could have said at that meeting. Maybe they're disabled and couldn't get to the meeting, or because of COVID they didn't have as many meetings anymore, face-to-face encounters. Maybe they didn't feel like they could express themselves due to power imbalances in meetings or issues that they didn't want to divulge directly. So this is an additional source of information, additional data points that can be used for due diligence processes, for complaints mechanisms, and we're finding ways to extract the data and integrate it with other systems that are no doubt being spoken about at this session as well. So the value proposition for organisations, I hope they're clear, but I really wanted to outline them a little bit further for the UK public sector. So the diaspora group, there are some diaspora groups who are already interested in using Loop to get feedback and to engage with populations in the countries back at home. There's refugee services here that's interested in using Loop for example, Somali communities here in the UK. We've already got the Somali dialects on the Loop platform, and so they could use it to express themselves, ask questions, say thank you for services that have been delivered, raise concerns, etc. in the UK about the services that they're receiving. It's a very inclusive approach across languages, which are often a barrier to engagement, across different input mechanisms, so bridging the digital divide. And hopefully that if the Loop can get going to scale, we'll start to have the types of information and data that feeds into research, informs policy decisions, informs project decisions and funding in the future. So summing it all up, I'd like to just finish off by playing this video. I'd like to once again thank you for joining us. My contact details and the details for learning more about Loop will be played at the end of this video, and I am still available to answer questions or comments in the chat that you may have. So thank you very much for joining this session, and I hope it's been interesting and engaging for you.
Imagine if your work with communities was complemented by a tool which allowed the people you serve to give feedback you could listen to. Imagine if you could engage directly with those people, replying to them and learning from them across languages in real time and at scale. Imagine if NGOs, charities, and civil society organizations could all learn directly from the people they're helping to improve services, solve problems, and minimize wastage. Loop is making all this a reality, enabling recipients of aid to have a real influence over the service they receive and an increased ability to shape their own destiny. Loop is a global platform for people to feedback on humanitarian and developmental services in their communities. People can access Loop easily and safely on almost any device. They can share their experiences and views on the web platform or by SMS message, or with Messenger or WhatsApp, or even by leaving a voice message, all in their own language. Feedback can be anonymous if preferred, and Loop has special safeguards for sensitive stories to keep people safe. By sharing their stories on Loop, people are shifting power into their own hands. And by engaging with people in Loop and responding directly to them, you and your organization will be helping to make that shift and to deliver better services. When your organization uses Loop, you can receive first-hand information from the communities you work in, including quantitative live data from Loop's statistics pages, to analyze trends over time, helping to inform the design of future services and put the voices of local people on decision-making tables everywhere. Loop brings organizations and beneficiaries closer together, benefiting everyone.
Great. So once again, thanks very much. Please be in touch, and I look forward to learning more from all of the other interesting sessions. Thank you.